Okay, so yeah, my name is Nick Olson. I'm actually the marketing manager at PredictWind. I do all our webinars. I have sailed out of your yacht club before, about 26 years ago. I sailed 49ers there. We used to have a series in Australia where we would sail in Sydney and Brisbane and then Melbourne. Can't remember what they called it. Anyhow, it was good fun. So I've got a little bit of an idea of where you all are, but yeah. So anyway, we're here to talk about PredictWind, and I will jump straight into a screen share so that I can sort of talk about what we have and hopefully give you some insights. Just need to move all my Zoom controls. And come down here. So yeah, so PredictWind has been around for about 14 years. It was founded by John Bilger, who's my boss. He's a former Olympian, sailing Olympian, and he was then the weatherman for Alingi in their America's Cup challenges and defences. We don't talk about that one too much here in New Zealand because obviously Alingi beat Team New Zealand and took the America's Cup away. But yeah, so that was, he did that right through until Alingi lost the dog match. And then in that time, they did a lot of weather model development at Alingi, and all the guys on the team, were going off doing regattas and they always wanted forecasts. And John thought, oh, well, I'll just make I'll make an app. How hard can this be? And, 14 years later, we, are continually developing our apps and what we deliver and offer. So it's it's an ever evolving thing. And if you've used PredictWind for a while, or you've sort of seen what we do, you probably would have seen that, especially if you use it for any sort of cruising or offshore sailing or racing, because we're always improving those tools. So for having all of the tools, we need to have weather models to go with them. So originally, we only ever had the PWG and PWE. Might have had the GFS as well. So the PWG and the PWE are actually a CCAM model. So they're actually out of Australia. Our head meteorologist is Australian. And they were the models that were developed with Alingi. And since then, we have done some development on those to improve them and make them better, and see if we can improve on what we had. From the America's Cup here, the last America's Cup, I thought they performed really, really well. And here in Auckland, my favorite model was actually the PWG, and I'll talk more about models later. So we have all these global models here. So these are all run at a global level. We have the ECMWF, which is the #1 weather model in the world for any national weather service. We have Spire, which is a private model run by a company called Spire, and they have a really neat way of how they collect all the data that goes into their models. They have a satellite network, and they fire radio waves through the atmosphere, and from the refraction they can somehow work out what the weather is doing. It works, it performs really well in any of the studies we've done. Especially over water. So if you're doing any offshore crossings, it does particularly well. UKMO is from the UK Met Service. It's the #2 National Weather Service model in the world in rankings. There's lots of studies out there, and you'll always see the ECMWF come up first and generally the UKMO second. You won't see Spire, PWG or PWE in there because they're private weather models, and so they don't get included in those studies. We do have and have done studies ourselves, you know, to validate data. And yeah, that's how we know that the spike is actually somewhat equal or better than the ECMWF out on the water. UKMO, yes, and GFS, which you will see everywhere. The reason you see the GFS everywhere is that it's the American Met Surface NOAA. They run that model and they give away the data for free. So you'll see that lots of places. You'll see that in lots of free apps. And yeah, and so you probably hear people talk about the GFS. I know that in Australia that BOM have their own model. I believe it's pretty similar to the UKMO. I believe, and I also believe at one stage they ran the CCAM model that we use. What's cool about the modeling that we do, we don't, and yeah, I'll talk about that now. So longer term, so probably jumping ahead a bit here, but longer term sort of stuff, you're looking for trends, but you're going to look at the ECMWF does particularly well longer term. And by longer term, I mean 3-5 days plus. Short term, the high resolution modeling that we do, you know, and I mean by that I mean today and tomorrow. So they only run, the high res is only 36 hours. And so, you know, if I'm going sailing in the morning, often I will see these you know, I will look at these as my preference, but I'm also looking for trends. You know, I'll go into that more later. It's probably a bit early for that. You'll see here we have regional models, the NAM, the HER, a Rome. So these two here, the NAM and the HER, they're actually North American models. So they're not, unless you're going over there, they're not really relevant to you. And a Rome is a high resolution model in Europe. And then we have obviously the PWG and the PWE that we run at high resolution at, and basically anywhere coastal popular coastal areas. Enough about models because we'll talk about them later. You know, I've actually done a webinar before on models, so if you want to go and watch that, you can. It's you know, definitely dives deep into models. So yeah, it's pretty good. You'll hear me talk a lot about high resolution modeling. I did have this video. In fact, let's watch this. It's 1:40, and it probably can explain a bunch of stuff better than what I can about high resolution weather models. So we'll watch that. Hopefully we don't get any YouTube ads. It's a little bit advertising, but anyway.
PredictWind offers the most accurate high-resolution and global modeling available. The process starts with observation data collected from thousands of weather sources around the world from both ECMWF and NOAA. With this data, a snapshot of current weather is generated every 12 hours. PredictWind then runs 2 atmospheric models based on these 2 data feeds to develop the global 50-kilometer resolution forecast. The PWE forecast is generated from the ECMWF observations and the PWG from the NOAA observations. We downscale the global 50-kilometer forecast by running the model at 8 kilometers and an incredible 1-kilometer resolution for popular coastal areas. At this resolution, geographic effects due to the topography and thermal sea breezes are accurately predicted by the model. The PredictWind model has been developed over 40 years to provide the highest resolution and most accurate forecast available. PredictWind also offers the best lineup of global forecast models. Other high-resolution regional models are also available for comparison. All weather models are available on the PredictWind app, forecast website, and the offshore app. The PredictWind weather routing tool always uses the highest resolution forecast data available and shows the optimum route for the top 6 global models for easy download and analysis to find the safest and fastest route. Try our world-leading forecast.
Okay, let's stop that there. Really just wanted to see the bit about the high-resolution modeling. We'll come back over here. So yeah, you'll hear me talk a lot about high-resolution modeling, but I just wanted to sort of give you a little bit of an overview of how that all happens. And, we're going to talk about weather routing next week, so I don't need to talk about that now. Okay, let's get into this. So we have 2 apps, and we have the PredictWind app and the PredictWind website, which is really what we're going to talk about today. And we're not even going to talk about all of the tools in there. We're going to be looking at the website. So I use the PredictWind app for anything to see whether I should hang out the washing today, whether I should tell the kids to take a raincoat with them, to regatta information, and whether I want to go fishing, telling the kids what the trends are for the day for their dinghy racing. So yeah, it's pretty versatile. There's lots of stuff in there, and we're going to try and cover off a bunch of those features today. So you can use that. It's free to download, and yes, then we have upgrades on that, but we run the free version of it is actually pretty good as well, and then there'll be certain pain points in there where we try and get you to upgrade. That's how I feed my family. Then we have the PredictWind offshore app, and so the offshore app is, you can use it for anything from yacht racing, like I use it when I do quite a bit of two-handed sailing, well, reasonable amount. Did the round North Island a couple of years ago, two-handed, and I'd use that even when we were doing a 50-mile race, or a 1,300 nautical mile race. I was using the offshore app. It's pretty awesome for that sort of stuff, but a big focus that we actually have with it is cruising, and helping people basically make better decisions while they're offshore, or planning their departure times to keep safe. It's and we add more tools in there to help with that. So, but anyway, today we're going to talk about that next week, and I think even the week after a bit more. But today we're going to talk about the PredictWind app and website. So let's jump into that. So I think I've set up a location where you all are. I don't know. I'll just refresh this because I don't know. I set this up before. And just make sure it's all new. You can see there that we've got all these. I'm actually in the tables, so the app and the website look the same. And I'm just clicking on that forecast button there, and we've got all these different parameters that I can look at down here, and then I've got a bunch of other stuff down here that we can look at in a bit. Lots of people will come into the app. I know this because we have data on how many pages you look at, and they will just look at forecast tables, or they'll look at the daily briefing or a wind map. And that's cool, and you can, and even if you look at all 3 of those, you'll probably gain a lot more information than reading the newspaper, or looking at an app that's perhaps just using the GFS model. So yeah, I mentioned before that we have all these models, and it is for good reason. It's not just sort of, oh, let's just put a whole lot of models in there and maybe one will be right. We look for trends, and consensus between the models. So we'll talk a bit more about trends when we go into graphs. But so I'm a big fan of the tables, and there's a lot of information in here. But you can see already there that we can actually see trends in what's happening. We've got our wind speed changes, direction changes. You can see here where we have all the different directions. You often see that expressed as light and variable, and that's how they get that, is there's all the directions there. Not everyone has their tables set up like I do. I've got everything open. You can actually you can remove some of the models, and you can actually collapse them like that. So I can actually simplify that. I can simplify all of these views if I want to, just by tapping or clicking on that left-hand side. And all of a sudden it's actually combining all of those models together. For some people like that. Personally, I like looking at all of the models and all of the directions and sort of seeing what's going on. And mainly because I like to see what, are they all agreeing or are they not? And do they all think the direction's the same or not? Because that's important to making my decisions. If I saw 4 that had the same and 1 that didn't, I'd want to know why that one that had a different wind direction, why it was doing that. And I'm meaning more at a time like this where we've got, a pretty good consensus. And you can see there, we've probably got an example where the UKMO obviously thinks that there's a change coming through later than all the other models. And so this is something to remember when you're looking at weather models is, the change, if there's a front coming through, that, being 2 hours early or 2 hours late is actually pretty good in forecasting terms. But it can make a huge difference to how you read your forecast. And just because it's early or late doesn't mean to say that the actual forecast is wrong. It's just, you just need to sort of move everything along a bit. Anyway, so you can see here we've got our wind speed. So whenever you're looking at a wind map or this wind speed here, you're looking at an average wind speed. Obviously, our directions, I can change those to, have numbers, or to have, northeast, southwest, so and have the directions written in like that. If I actually hover over it, you'll see the number for each one. Gusts. So gusts are from the how you'll see that 5 of the models have a gust parameter. The Spire model doesn't have a gust parameter, and so it's usually just taken from a high level in the model, or the ECMWF in particular, they have an actual gust forecast. So depending on the different models, but your gust can be 40% higher, and you'll see if for instance we had 15 knots here and we had 25 knots here. If we have a look, scroll across, do we get any windy weather? No, not really. If you see, there we are. We have some warnings, and what they are, I just need to move my zoom controls. It'll be warning me about gusts. So the gusts are, that they've reached the threshold where we consider that there's a big difference between the gust and the average, and so that's part of our weather warning system, and so it's an indicator of volatility. So you might see other things there. We've got, I'll just open up the rainfall again. You have rainfall, and if I saw that there was rainfall and that volatility, and I saw that there was CAPE down here, which is convective available potential energy. Put all those things together and I'll be like, oh, that's, there's possibly thunderstorms, but we would get a warning as well. We'd get a warning telling us that. So rainfall, we'll talk more about rainfall later, because it is really important for, understanding your forecasts. It's, how when you watch the news on the weather, they have the front drawn on, and it's got it's the curve with the little spiky bits on it, or if it's occluded or whatever type of system, part of the system it is. They just draw that on, and they look for the rain, and I'll show you that. They look for the rain band and the change in wind direction, and that's how they know that the front's there. And then they can look at the temperature and see if it gets colder or hotter, and so they know whether it's a cold front or a warm front. By the way, I'm not a meteorologist. Just want to let everyone know that in case I say something that's factually incorrect. Cloud cover as well can be important for with your thermal breezes and things like that. Also, your rainfall is, if all the models have got 100% cloud cover, you know that it's going to be probably pretty consistent rain if you've got decent numbers up here. But if it's like this, you know, you could say, well, this might be just scattered showers. You know, we've got, you know, intermittent rain cover, cloud cover with small bits of rain. You will, yeah, probably, I'll talk about Cape a bit more later, but probably in your part of the world, it's pretty important because it's your indicator of, well, an indicator of thunderstorms. We have a lightning parameter in there now. It's from the ECMWF model, so it's just a parameter that's in that model. So is nice to know. We actually had to change that because one of my kids didn't want to go sailing because we kept getting a lightning warning because we had the threshold too low for the warning. So he kept telling me that there was going to be lightning this afternoon. UV index, obviously nice to know. Temperature. People often say, oh, your temperatures are really low. Usually that's because you've got your location set up over water. Something to know here is that we're looking at where I have put the spot on the map, so that all this information that we see is for that spot. Until we look at a map, when we're looking at a wider area, all the information is a spot forecast. Waves, so we've got pressure there, a fog, don't know how relevant that is to you guys. Wave height. So we're actually going to take the PWG and the PWE wave models out of here, and we're going to put all of the ECMWF data in there, mainly because it's high resolution. So the ECMWF wave model is 14 kilometers resolution globally, which is pretty awesome. It's a very good wave model. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to put the wind wave, the primary, secondary and tertiary swell in there, probably make any surfers in the room happy. But if you've used our weather routing in the last year, you'll see that we have a lot of wave stuff in there now. And obviously when you have those different wave states working together or working against each other, it can make your sea state very different. So that's part of the reasoning why we're going to do that, is that just have that more information that we can get from that particular model. Moon cycle, if you're a fisherman, is handy to know. And obviously your tide times. I mean, we always want to know what the tide is. So it's just having all that information in there. I'll flick over here to the daily briefing. Where this came from was actually my boss, John. He has 2 daughters, and he would be taking them to sailing, and he would ask them what the forecast was, and they all had the PredictWind app, and they were telling him different things every time. And it was different to what he thought that was happening. And so we created this what we call the daily briefing. It's a free feature. It's actually really cool. There are professional sailors that use this for their forecasting, because it takes, I love this stuff. I love looking at the tables. I like looking through all that and working out what's going on. Some people don't want to do that, and they just want to know what's it going to be like. And so this is actually just an algorithm that's taking the outliers out of the model. So if there was a model that was different to all the others, it will actually remove it, and then got a whole lot of parameters set up that will, in the algorithm, that will give all of this information here. Does a pretty good job. And yeah, there's some very good sailors whose names you probably know that use this. So it's super cool. Has a lot of information in there. Your tides, is the breeze increasing or decreasing? And you actually should see direction changes anyway somewhere. Decreasing, no, I can't see it. Anyway, sometimes you'll see it also, it's backing or veering. righty ho, we won't spend too much more time on that. Forecast graphs. I never used to be a fan of graphs. I was, when I started at PredictWind 8 years ago or whatever it was, I had zero interest in graphs, and now I'm a massive graphs fan. It's really come about. I mean, John pushes them a lot. He loves graphs. You know, when he was doing the America's Cup stuff, he said that all that Russell wanted to know off the start line was whether he should go left or right, and that was all he wanted to know. And that was a big part of the job, was being able to confidently say you should go left or right, or you want the left side of the course or the right side of the course. And to be fair, I've started doing this with my kids. And what we're really talking, I mean, what they were doing there was they were actually doing up to the minute, you know, until the last minute they could talk to the crew. They were like saying, you should, you know, we can see that it's, you know, it's going to go left, there'll be left shift. And they were right 85% of the time, which is, I've actually heard Russell Coates talking about it. And he, you know, he said, you know, he was talking to a bunch of kids that one of my kids happened to be there, and he said, how cool would it be if you guys knew exactly, you know, 85% of the time you knew which way to go off the start line, how much easier it would make your life. So anyway, that's what my story is going on about here, is that this is why we use the graphs, because we're looking for trends. And so we can see, and it's also a really easy way to interpret the forecast. So, you know, if you're unsure as to what's going on, come in here and go, okay, is the breeze increasing or decreasing throughout the day? You know, we can see here over the next 6 hours, the trend is down. Doesn't matter what, that all the models are different. Whatever you've got now, the trend is down. And then the direction. So, you know, same thing. It's like the you might look at the tables and be like, oh, what's happening here? There's all sorts of stuff. But like, I will say to Flynn, who's my eldest son, I will say to him before he goes sailing, I'll be like, the trend for today is that it's going to go left. And I said, and, you know, and that doesn't mean to say that he should go left every time. It means that's what the breeze is going to do. As the day goes on, it's going to clock left. And so for any sailing that you're doing, whether you're sailing up the coast, whether you're just going for a day sail or you're yacht racing, knowing what those trends are doing is a super easy way to understand how you should be looking at the wind, increasing, decreasing, going left or right. It's you know, as simple and stupid as that sounds, you'd be surprised at how many people just don't really sort of go, okay, you know, rather that they'll get stuck up on the fact that our forecast said that, you know, that it was going to be 8 knots, but it was 12. And it's like, yeah, but the trend was down. So yeah, there's always the sail to what you've got sort of thing. Yeah, so there's a bunch of features, parameters in there. You can go through them all and, you know, look at all the different, you know, what they're gonna, all the different parameters, and see what you can glean from that. 1 day, 10 day, so we can see the week's worth of wind, and all the other parameters. Wind maps. So I'm sure that, you know, whatever app or that you use, or website that you use, most of them these days have wind maps. You know, it's a nice way to visualize it. Most of them have streamlines. If they don't, they're you know, probably struggling with their tech. You don't have to look at, I know plenty of sailors that don't like streamlines. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I mean these little you know, movie bits going across the screen indicating the wind. We can go back to wind barbs. A lot of people still love wind barbs, and then also wind arrows. And so we've got the color contours that we can see one of my lights just fell over. You can see what's the wind strengths through the contours. So but because I'm a fan of them, we're going to go back to them. So you'll see here I've opened up this while I'm here. I've opened it up. I actually clicked on the model here, and it opened up this little box. I can change my models, changed it over to the ECMWF, so I can be comparing two different models. I had the PWE there, but we don't. I want to show you the high-res modeling, but we'll go and look at that just on the PWG. And I can change all my resolutions if I want to. If I zoom the map, it will automatically zoom in. You'll see here we have GMDSS. I'll show you in a minute what that is. It's I'll show you. And my animation speed, I can play this, and so I can change that. We used to have a rabbit, and I think it hasn't been there for about 2 years, but I still talk about the rabbit in the team meetings. I love the rabbit. I could just move the little slider and increase the map speed. But so yeah, this is where you come to change your models in the maps, and change any other parameters. So if I zoom right out, I can talk about the GMDSS. Anywhere in Australian territorial waters and actually beyond, the GMDSS forecast is written by BOM. And what it is, it's a written high seas text forecast. And what we did is we took this, so I'll show you what I mean by that, by a text forecast, as if I click on here, it looks like this. And it's really great for anyone that's sailing offshore. So I won't talk about too much today because we can talk about that next week. But it tells you what's going on. But it's when it does that, it tells you, oh, north of 20, south heavy, at times 240 nautical mile north of trough, and stuff like this. And it's like, that's cool if you can sort of plot that on the chart. And so we actually have a guy that works for us. He used to be the AI guy at Team New Zealand. He was the one that built their simulator that the sailors sail against. And yeah, very clever guy. And he turned all of that text into these graphics that we see on the map. So the machine learning program can read these GMDSS forecasts and turn it into these images. But at first we thought it was going to be really easy, but all of the Met officers around the world use different languages. So that was why we had the AI guy come in. So you see there, we do have some of our little squiggles and whatnot, and it tells you what they are. It's a ridge. And so at the moment, they're only now, so you'll see as I scroll forward, they disappear. And I can animate this map, and I can, you'll see I've got it on slow, must be how my brain works. But if I wanted to, I can look at a big picture and see all the systems, and then you'll see that the GMDSS has disappeared now because it's gone out of the time range that was displayed that we were reading. So we're not reading the stuff in the future. We are going to though. But I can have a look at this big picture, and I can compare these two models and see what they're doing. Are they doing a pretty similar thing for my spot or not? And dig into that if I want to. So always good to have a look at a big picture. People do like on a big picture to change over to one of these, because then you get the isobars on there, which is nice to see. But you'll see here, if we zoom in, you'll see that my resolution has been changing up here. I don't know whether anyone noticed, but there was numbers up here. We had 100 kilometer resolution. Now we're at 50, and now we're at 8. I don't know whether that video before really explained resolution. Resolution is essentially breaking the world up into squares. And so this is made up of 8 kilometer squares. Is there somewhere where I can see that? No, not that I can think of. So the higher the resolution, the more detail you're going to get for that small area. So each small area has a lot more information going into it. So an example would be if I was looking, I'll zoom out. If I was looking at 50 kilometers here, or I was looking at 50 kilometers, this resolution here, it doesn't know that half of it's land, half of it is water. It just thinks it probably, if it's mostly on the land, it probably thinks it's all land, and so you don't get the heating effects. You don't get the contours of the land. So basically, and it doesn't pick up thermal as well. So resolution for especially anything coastal and short-term forecasting, resolution matters. When you're out at sea, resolution is not as important. So we zoom in here, we're at 8K, and you can sort of see here we're at 8K, the land coming over, the wind coming over Moreton Island there. It doesn't change much. But as we zoom in a bit more, and for some reason why isn't it changing resolution? Maybe it's because I'm on the ECMW. Let's just change it. Oh, I was outside so here we go. I'll show you what the problem was there. So once I went out of the range of the high resolution model, I wasn't going to get it. As soon as I go back into the 36 hours, I can see it. And so you'll see here that the ECMWF at 8K and the PWG at 1K, we get slightly different forecasts because the 1K is picking up the land effects more. You can even see here it's picking up some funneling between these two land masses. You'll see it down here as well. Wind is on average 30% slower over land, so that's why we get such a big difference over this land as to what we get on the water. And in fact, that worked out pretty well, didn't it? 7 knots there and 10 knots out there. So if you don't know what I did there, I clicked on the screen and I have this little pop-up, and I can plonk them anywhere on the screen if I want to, or move them around like this. So and yeah, I've got the split screen going. You can only do this on a computer. If I go like that, I can look at just one model and look at the weather that way. What I probably should have mentioned right at the start, and I did say that everything was location specific. So you'll see here I have all my locations. And you'll see I've got Sydney there because I want to see what's happening with the Sail GP this weekend. And then I've got other places that I sail around here in general. But that spot there is where all of my information will zoom in. So I set this spot here, and all the information in the tables that I'm looking at is taken from this spot, the graphs. So you just need to be aware of that. So you can see that if I'd put that location here on the land, I'd be getting quite a different forecast. And so you might be like, oh, why is my forecast so different to yours? It does matter where you put these, and you need to be aware of where you put it. Another example would be if you put it in the SCAP here, you'll probably get different forecasts because there'll often be acceleration through there. Same as if you put it out here, and or you're looking at the tables and you're actually down at the Gold Coast. The forecast for here is different to the forecast for here. Okay, doke. Gust maps. Really, we don't consider gusts a lot until we get over about 12 knots. Gusts are not really a thing. I'll zoom out a bit and we scroll through the week. Find somewhere where it's windy. Windy over there. So if I just flick between the gust map and the wind map, I'm not seeing massive differences. Again, if I have my little, I can put my little pointer on there. 16 knots, 17 knots. Not a very big difference. But really worth looking at gust maps, because sometimes you will see very different things to when you're just looking at the wind map. It can make it go from what you think might be quite benign to something that maybe actually, maybe it's a bit windy, or maybe we need these sails, or whatever it is. CAPE. So I mentioned CAPE earlier, convective available potential energy. It is the amount of energy in the atmosphere. So if you see CAPE and you have high CAPE levels, you'll get reasonably high CAPE levels in and around Brisbane, and basically most places in Australia. It's in New Zealand, for instance, we get very low CAPE levels, but if I see any levels of CAPE with a frontal band, I know that it's going to be a banger. In your part of the world, it's if you get a front and there's CAPE, same thing. It means that it's probably going to be, how you can have a front where it's, it's sort of just the breeze just sort of changes and there might be a tiny shower, or you can get those ones where you get absolutely smashed. And so generally the ones where you get smashed, if you went back and looked at it, it'll be that there was CAPE in the forecast. So you'll see there that there's CAPE down the coast here. If we scroll through your week, yeah, I know if you see this stuff, and you'll learn after looking at the forecast for a while, you see that you can and there's generally it needs moisture. So if you see rain and CAPE together, you will get some sort of thunderstorm activity. Before I go to wave maps, I'll just look at the rain map, which I have no idea why it's not loading. It's because I'm doing a webinar. Let's change models. No idea why that wasn't loading. So we are in the same, I think we're in the same place as before. And so you can see there we have got some rain. No, we haven't got rain and CAPE together. So watch for that. If you see it, you're potentially going to have thunderstorms that day. Wave maps, as I mentioned before, ECMWF wave map is wave model is really good. Don't usually go around saying that one model is better than another, but in this instance, it is true. And resolution, again, resolution matters unless you're miles out in the sea. But you'll see here, it's not doing a perfect job there because we're 14K resolution. It thinks that there's waves going through the island. But it is doing a reasonable job. You can see here, it's got a pretty good idea of what's going on. Again, you can click on the map anywhere and see the size of it. Man, 7 seconds, 2.3 meters. Wave period is important to know. I'll talk heaps more about wave when we do weather routing in the next webinar. Rain maps, cloud maps, air temp maps, all the same sort of thing. Sea temp. Yeah, if you want to dig into all of those, they're all there. I'll just carry on because I realize I'm probably spending a bit long on a few things. Observations, so super important. A really nice way to validate the forecast. I don't know what the observations are like in your area here. I don't know. I'm sure you will know which ones are good and which ones aren't. I did a whole lot of weather station installs around Auckland for the last America's Cup. And what I didn't realize was how important positioning is of a weather station. So any shadowing can make a huge difference. We have one on a lighthouse just north of Auckland, and Maritime New Zealand wouldn't let us put it above the light, and so we decided, oh well, let's just put it on this one side, and you know, it should be all right. And it ended up misreading so badly when the wind was blowing from the windward side, and even though it's hardly shielded, like the light's tiny, it's hardly shielded, we ended up putting another sensor on the other side, and so now we have two sensors on this lighthouse, and you will see 10-15 knots difference between the two sensors, and they are honestly a meter apart. So observate, yeah, where the observation is important. You know, there'll be some that are rubbish and some that are really good, and so learning which ones are good around where you are is important. And then you can actually come in here, you can go into this observations page, and you could, I mean, it looks like the EC is probably doing a pretty good job at the moment, you know, 10 knots there, 9 knots there. You could have a look at, you know, another model and see if they're doing a good job or not. Really good way of, this is a good thing to do, especially if the forecasts are different, is to have a look at your observations, come in here and see, is there a model matching up with what we've got now? There's a bunch of things you can do with the observations. So I just clicked on that one there in a reciprocal marker, and you can see here I've graphed it over. It's got a graph there of the last 12 hours of what the wind speed has been on that observation. I can look at the last 2 days, or I can look at the last hour. Doesn't look like it updates very often, judging by the you know, the frequency of the updates on it may not be that high, just judging by the way that it looks with the you know, the how jagged it is. But anyway, needless to say, it shows us the trend that we've had over the last hour, sorry, the last 12 hours, or whatever we want to look at. You know, and we can do that with any of them. If I came over here and clicked on graph, any observation that's on my map will show up in the graph. So you want to be reasonably careful about how you do that if you want to actually get something useful from it. If you wanted to see what the trend was for the last, you know, 6 hours or something, you might want to just come in here and, you know, if we zoom in and you know, let's say maybe I'll just get these, you know, and I can see the trend across those two there. Same with the tables. I can actually have them all in a list. If I zoom out a bit more and have more on my map, then I'll get more on my table. Quite a nice way. I quite like this view when I am out keelboat sailing, because I can sort of quickly have a look at what's going on, you know, around all of Auckland. It's pretty handy, you know, has that southerly change come in over on the west coast, or whatever you want to know. You know, just a quick look at the observations in this form can be pretty handy. Local knowledge has lots of information about places. If you're going to a regatta or you're going to a different location, this can be super helpful. And you might be like, well, I can use, Google for that, and no doubt you can. But I'll show you a little trick, which is pretty cool, is if I click on any of these locations, so I click on here and I look at the Rivergate Marina and I come down here and I can see the historical weather for February. So I'm looking at 10 years of historical data for February. And so I can instantly see for February, the most common breeze is a southeasterly, that in general, it's pretty light. This is for quite a big area. So this would probably be relevant for all of Brisbane, because I think it's a 30-kilometer resolution. So this is, I've got all these statistics, and I can do that for any part of the year, and I can go and have a look at the windrows and see, this information that's 10 years of data put into monthly chunks. It's pretty cool. So, for instance, if I was going to come over and do a regatta in November, I could click on there and I could go, oh, okay, cool. We're going to have, it's probably going to be, a relatively light air regatta. But, and we're going to have northeasterly. So does that mean, I need to be good in these conditions. And I can go through the different months and look, and I need to move my zoom controls so I can close it. And I don't know why on this one I can't see, probably because of where it's located, why I can't see the wind, the wave. That you can do that for waves as well. So very cool. Yeah, really cool thing to see that average historical weather data. I call it average because that's what we used to call it. So but yeah, there's lots of, if you're going somewhere else to a different location, there is lots of cool sort of tips in there that people have added. If you're going somewhere and you're into that sort of thing, please add some locations to our local knowledge. So tools, we're not going to talk about most of these tools here today because they're mainly our weather routing and whatnot sort of tools. While we're here, I will just talk about ocean data. We are pretty close to adding high resolution tidal currents into PredictWind for the whole world. I'm particularly excited about that myself because I go fishing as well as sailing, but both of those activities are super interesting to actually be able to see the tidal flows. If I just click on there, and I'll just quickly want to show you kind of what that will, I really need to go somewhere decent in the world where there's actually plenty of tide. We'll talk about it next week. But the modeling and how it all looks for ocean data is super cool. Having an actual tidal. So at the moment we have current data, but it's ocean currents or ocean. And there's a few places where we have high resolution tidal. But so for instance, if I was here in Auckland, like seeing all those the tides running out in and out through there. I've actually looked at our tidal model for Auckland, and it's super cool. Stuff that you always sort of knew, but you can actually see the tide turning on the sides first, for instance. It's super cool. Anyway, that's coming out in a month or two, or whenever the developers get around to it. What I do want to talk about in here is forecast alerts. So I use these. I do a bit of winging, and so I obviously want there to be a decent amount of breeze for winging, and having a busy life. I want to know when those days are, and so I set up these alerts, and so I can choose the days that I want to be alerted. If you have a flexible work schedule and you can go out during the week and do whatever you want to do, You might set that during the week, and I can set my the time of the day that I want to be alerted for. So I don't want to get, I'm never going to be there before 7 a.m. and I'm probably not going to go in the dark. So I could have it at 7 p.m. And so for that day, I could set up the wind speed minimum maximum. I have one set. I want it to see when it's over 15 knots, and I get this email sent to me telling me that it's on Thursday it's going to be my parameters have been met, and I can set up all these parameters in there, and away I go. So I can also do that just for one day. I just need to move these painful Zoom controls again. So that's a forecast alert, and so that's letting me know what's happening in the future. Something that we did a little while ago was we put in observation alerts, and so this, you could use this for all sorts of things. It could be similar to what I was just explaining. When's the sea breeze coming in? You could just set up an alert that when this observation here gets hit, with 15 knots, that the breeze has come in. So now it's time to jump in your car and away you go to do whatever activity it is that you want. Or you could, perhaps you have a boat in a marina or on a mooring, and you want to know if it gets, it's got above 30 knots or whatever. I'm going to go down and check the boat, or just, or whatever the scenario is. I actually use it, if I want to know if there's a front coming through, it'll ping me if there's been a wind speed or direction change. So it's pretty cool. I don't know how many, don't know whether it's that widely used, because I don't know whether people really realize that it's there. It's a bit hidden in the menu here, but it's very cool. I don't think we need to talk about AIS data this week. Probably see your boats in there. Okay, so I think that's probably me for now, and I'll do my best to answer some questions. Hopefully I know the answers. Go back to the maps. If you guys a minute to get your...
So if I unmute, can you hear us okay now?
Yes, I can.
Just one question from myself. You haven't touched on the validation side of things of your web page. I mean, does the validation still work?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think I just sort of skipped past the bottom part of that. Menu. So I can talk about the validation. So if I can just find the right screen to go back to. So what we are talking about here is validation. So this is pretty cool. You can look at it in a table view, and this is very interesting. I've never seen the GFS in the #1 ranking. So on a one day, very pretty cool. So this is over the last week, the mean average error for the wind speed. So here with the PWG is 3 knots wrong, and the GFS is 1.8 knots wrong, either side of the observation. We can and we can look at that for 7 days. And so what is interesting to see here is you'll see the degradation over time. So I mentioned before about models being good, better at 3 days, 4 days in the future. And you'll see here that the UKMO, for instance, has a shocker around day 6 and 7. Whereas PWG is actually pretty consistent throughout. And yeah, the GFS is doing really well there until about day 7. Wind direction, Again, this is in degrees and it's a mean average error. I don't use this a whole lot myself. It is pretty cool that you can actually see the rankings. They do change every day. If I come over here to the graphs and I go back 1 week, you'll see the model performance changes on over time. So you'll see that some are doing better than others. And so it's, you know, I know, for instance, here in Auckland, that in summer, these guys do really, really well. And then in winter, I see Spire doing and UKMO doing really, really well. ECMWF's sort of always there or thereabouts. And the GFS performs really poorly in general here in Auckland. So really interesting to see, you know, what the models are doing. If you scroll down this page, you can see, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to zoom that. You can see which observation that data is being taken from. And so any location that you set, if there is an observation nearby, you can have a look at the validation and see which model has been doing well and which one hasn't. And so it's another way that you can sort of see, you know, which model should I be doing, or are all the models doing a reasonably good job, or what. So
yeah, the first time when I was sailing around Tasmania in waters I didn't know, it was good to be able to see which models were giving us the best results, and you pay more attention to those.
Yeah, I mean, and just on that as well is that, you know, I monitor our social media, and often I see people say, oh, why don't you just look out the window? And do you know what? On a boat, at home, you should be looking out the window, because you should be looking out the window and saying, does this match up with my forecast? You know, and it's the same as what that validation tool is doing.
That's what my wife tells me all the time. All right, guys, any questions? Any other questions? My goodness.
Perfect.
A sea of silence. Well,
I've probably bored them to death.
do
you know what? Their drinks have run out.
I think it's either that or it's time to go and get some dinner. So look, please, guys, let's, in our usual way, just thank Nick very much for his time. And for those of us that are joining us for the second lecture, again, this time next Friday, and Nick's committed to the next 3 weeks, so I really do appreciate the time. It's nearly 10 o'clock over there, so time for you to go to bed, mate. So thank you very much.
Yeah, hopefully all the kids are asleep. And yeah, thank you for having me. And something I should have said earlier was, if you have any questions, please reach out to our support team. So you can find that you can get through to them via the app, or email them on support@predictwind.com. They're all sailors. Some of them are, you know, ex-Volvo sailors and, you know, national champions and whatnot. They're really worth talking to and will answer any questions that you have. So definitely reach out to them.